After a very long wait, the all-new Mitsubishi Strada is finally here, but now with a new name. They're now calling it the Mitsubishi Triton. Now, fun fact, they have been calling the Strada as the Triton elsewhere in the world for a very long time. But finally, in the Philippines, it is now also the Triton. Anyway, this car right beside us is the top-of-the-line version of the Triton. This is the Mitsubishi Triton Athlete 4-wheel drive. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at this pickup truck and see if it is any good. But now let's start off with its design on the exterior. So it still uses the dynamic shield design language of the front grille that Mitsubishi has been using for a while, but now it's a little bit more squared off. And that is also true for the rest of the exterior panels of this vehicle as compared to the previous Strada. You can really see that even the lights right here with the separation of the DRLs and the LED headlamps, they're a little bit more squared off. The color scheme too, they call this the Yamabuki Orange Metallic, and it really pops, especially because of the two-toneness given all of your black accents. Now, speaking of the black accents too, you have these over fenders, right? At least for this Athlete 4-wheel drive version. But the issue I have with it is it makes the fenders a little bit too wide. So the wheels themselves, they don't look too flush. It could use a little bit of spacers in my opinion, but nonetheless, this car still looks pretty good. Now anyway, here on the side, what you'll also notice is just how much bigger it is compared to before. The old Strada, it had what they call the J line, right? And they had to do that to increase your interior space. But since they've lengthened the wheelbase of the new Triton, it's not as prominent anymore. For your wheels, you get them blacked out for this athlete trim, and surprisingly, the rear suspension still uses leaf springs. But come the driving segment later on, you will see that this is surprisingly comfortable despite having leaf springs. The rear also looks a little bit boxier and square compared to before. You'll notice that with the tailgate as well as the lights. Now here at the back, you'll also see that the Triton logo, that is massive. So people will immediately know that you're driving a Triton. Now what's kind of odd about this vehicle is despite being the top of the line trim, right? This tailgate, well, yeah, that's still pretty heavy. That is not assisted. Almost all of its competitors, at least when it comes to the top-of-the-line trims of those vehicles, they're all assisted, but for this one, well, it's not. But good thing is you still do get a bed liner, and this bed is also pretty large. Now, the old Strada came with a 2.4-liter turbocharged diesel engine. This one still maintains that displacement, but now you have a twin-scroll turbo or a two-stage turbo, which now brings your total output 204 horsepower and 470 Newton meters of torque paired to a 6-speed automatic. It's not the highest output in its class, but it still is more than good enough. For fuel economy, you're looking at around 7.4 kilometers per liter inside the city and about 15 kilometers per liter on the highway. Now for the interior of the Triton, first we check the door, and that doesn't sound too bad. Now inside here, you'll notice that the materials, they may not be as premium as what you would get with the Ford Ranger, for example, because you do get tons of hard touch plastic, but it feels pretty high quality and feels pretty well made. Now there are still some soft touch panels here and there, including this upper glove box and on the side of the doors too, but yeah, for the most part, there's really not too much leather nor soft touchness in here. Even the steering wheel, while it gets orange stitching and it has like a very thin film or covering of leather, it really isn't plush in any way. But this steering column tilts and telescopes, and it goes pretty far back, so you can easily find your perfect driving position, which is also supplemented by your 10-way power adjustable driver's seat. Unfortunately for the passenger, it is only manually adjustable, but I mean, that is okay. You also get very nice patterns on it. You get like orange leatherette on the side and black suede by the center, also complemented by tons of orange stitching. Now for your screens in this car, you do have a digital instrument cluster, kind of. Only the center area is a screen. The sides, they are still analog. And this looks like it has been taken straight out of a Nissan because there is that Nissan-Mitsubishi Renault alliance, right? Now here on the center, you get another screen. This time, this is 9 inches big and comes with a reverse camera. It is pretty clear, but the angle is not my favorite. And it also comes with a 360-degree top-down view camera. It also has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's also very easy to use and pretty responsive too. Now moving down here, you get dual zone climate control, you have a wireless charging pad, you have a USB-A port and a C port plus a 12-volt outlet. Now instead of giving you any sort of futuristic shifter, Mitsubishi decided to stick with the basics. So you just have a regular shifter, and unfortunately, you do not get an electronic parking brake with auto hold, which for 2024 standards, especially for a top-line version of a pickup truck, I think they should have included that. Another thing they did not include is, if you look here on top, this rear view mirror, well, it still is the flippy thingy and you don't get auto dimming. So kind of a bummer really. Now for your cubby spaces, you do have this split glove box. You have two cup holders here by the center. Whoops. And you also have this pretty big center console by the center. Yeah, center console. And on the side, you also get jug holders. For other features, well, while you don't have the full suite of advanced driver assistance systems, you do have the SUA mitigation system. You have rear cross traffic alert. You have forward collision warning and mitigation, as well as blind spot monitoring. For airbags, you get 7 of them, including a driver knee airbag, and you also get 6 speakers. Now for the rear seats, first you check the door. And oddly, it doesn't sound as good as the front. Perhaps it's because it's a lot shorter, right? But anyway, here at the back, first thing I want to talk about is there is this grab handle right here. So ingress is not hard. I wish all pickup trucks would come with this to make ingress much easier, right? But for some reason, it's not. But at least the Triton has it. Now here too, you'll notice that here on the doors, the little amounts of soft touch materials from the front, they don't really continue back here with the exception of your elbow pad. But still, nonetheless, this space is pretty good because remember how I said earlier that they didn't really have to use the J-line anymore for the cab of the pickup truck because they lengthened the wheelbase? That really shows because now you get some extra legroom. It's not life-changing amounts of legroom, but this is still not bad. I am only 5'6" tall though. And in terms of headroom, that is pretty good too because the cab is still pretty square. Now for your toys back here, you do get rear air vent, but only for this athlete trim. You get a USB-A port, a C port, as well as a 12-volt outlet, as well as another center armrest right here, which is pretty thick and comes with 2 cup holders too. Now what is pretty cool about this is that in a lot of these rear seats, right, by the time you sit in the middle, you're gonna have way less headroom because the center seat's a little bit high. But for the Triton, Mitsubishi did something clever. They made it sink so low, that way you still have plenty amounts of headroom back here. Now we drive the Mitsubishi Triton Athlete 4-wheel drive, and driving this is super surprising because I was expecting that it will drive like a regular pickup truck wherein it's not too comfortable, right? I mean, the previous Strada, yes, it was comfortable enough, but this is just super comfortable. It still is bouncy, it still is like matagtag as we say in Filipino, but it's not firm at all, it's not hard, it's super soft. In fact, it's a lot softer than what you would get with the Toyota Fortuner or the Ford Everest. It really is super good. The first thing you would notice immediately here, aside from that, would be the steering and how light it is too. Because as long as you get this top-of-the-line Athlete 4-wheel drive trim, you will get electronic power steering. Again, that is really weird. The rest of the lineup gets the regular hydraulic steering, which will make it super heavy, right? But this one, yeah, it's such a breeze to drive. Now, there is a downside to that, and that would be the fact that this has virtually zero steering feedback. But would you really need a lot of steering feedback from a pickup truck? Will you really want to kind of drive this athletically, as the name would suggest? Well, not really. So yes, this light steering system is perfect for your daily driving needs. Now for the power, it's also plenty powerful. 204 horsepower and 470 Newton meters of torque. It may not be the highest power output in its class. The Ranger, for example, does around 210, and the Hilux GRS, I believe that does like 213. But this feels a lot lighter, so as you gun it, it can really go. And that 6-speed transmission, it is also super smooth and super responsive. Now for noise, vibration, and harshness, you'll also be pretty surprised because it is pretty quiet in here, even when you are traveling at pretty high speeds. But what is pretty funny about this Triton is the note of the engine is exactly the same as what you would hear in the Isuzu crosswinds of old. Of course, it's nowhere near as loud. In fact, it is pretty quiet. But if you listen closely to that note, maybe I just don't have a musical ear, or maybe I do, but I can hear that it sounds exactly the same as the crosswind, and that is pretty funny. Vibrations too, despite having a diesel engine, it's not too prominent, so it doesn't really get annoying at any point in time. We said earlier that it doesn't really have that much steering feedback, right? And you don't really want to drive this athletically. And the suspension, yeah, well, that shows. Because also, since it has a super soft suspension, you really do feel a lot of roll when you do this to your Triton. So just don't drive it athletically. Just drive it like how a pickup truck is supposed to be driven, and you'll be absolutely golden. In terms of visibility, a lot of pickup trucks do struggle with it because you don't really have like quarter panels to see out of for your blind spot, and you can't really see out the bed, right, when you're reversing. But this one, it still feels pretty manageable when you reverse it. It doesn't feel too long. And of course, you do have that reverse camera, which is pretty clear to help you when you are parking your Triton. Finally, I want to talk about the advanced driver assistance systems. And unfortunately, yes, it doesn't come with adaptive cruise control, which is a little bit of a bummer, yes. Especially at this price range, I would expect it to have that. But it does come with like blind spot monitoring and parking sensors and forward collision warning and autonomous emergency braking. So maybe it's not the most fully loaded out there, but the things you would absolutely need and not just want, well, it has it. And to some people, maybe that is more than good enough. So it's comfortable, powerful, and pretty good looking. But how much does the Triton Athlete 4-wheel drive cost? Well, you can get it for a pretty respectable 1,909,000 pesos. And at that price range, it may not be the most technologically equipped pickup truck in its class, but if you're really looking to strike the balance between modernity and old school technology, then I think this pickup truck will serve you pretty well.